Okay, in this I'm going to go over reading these lab results. I have a few different examples of things that you'll see. So in this one, I'm going to scroll down, see what we have. Okay, so here you have the samples, what you've taken. You see the serial number that was on the spore trap right up there, whatever you called each spore trap. So this one's control, upstairs, downstairs. So down here at the bottom you'll see the total spore count. This is all of the different species of mold that are added up and get your total spores. You don't really necessarily do anything with that. That's not our indicator of issue. While there should have be relatively close if there's not any problems going on. So first things that we're going to look at is the most common things that we will see. And typically that is going to be your basidiospores and cladosporium. You're usually always going to see some basidiospores and cladosporium outside. These are common mold, common outdoor mold growth, and in turn we will naturally see some of that come inside. So in this case you see the uh, the basidiospores is a little bit lower on the inside. Same thing for the downstairs, and the cladosporium, same thing, same situation. Um, Now we do have some Penicillium aspergillus. This is going to be seen at this is acceptable at low levels. This middle number, the spores per cubic meter. This is the what we measure. What it calls a quote unquote failed test, or if somebody has a problem. This number right here in the middle is going to be anything over 1,000 spores per cubic meter. Okay, so anything over 1,000 spores per cubic meter for Penicillium aspergillus is going to change this to elevated mold conditions, yes. Okay, so the only other thing on this page that would, if we see, the only thing that on this page that would call this a failed test would be this one spore of Stachybotrys, okay, and the 13 spores per cubic meter. So there should never be any Stachybotrys in an indoor environment. This is a pretty much only going to see this when there is a water damage present. It can only grow on paper products, so like drywall. So this is where it's going to happen. So there is some type of issue in this property, whether that's it is a long-standing problem that has yet to go airborne and it only caught one spore. Stachybotrys is a thick black mold that is not easily airborne. So even if you see a wall full of mold that you know that it's an issue, you may not necessarily have a whole lot of Stachybotrys in the air because it is not easily airborne. So we see one spore, we could pretty much guarantee that there's going to be some Stachybotrys somewhere. And now, if you had this one spore of Stachybotrys somewhere and there's nothing there, you do have the ability to say that there is not an issue, and maybe there was some in the carpet, and you were walking on the carpet, and it might have kicked up one spore or something along those lines, or a misreading. But in general, if you see Stachybotrys, you do have some type of mold issue, and that is backed up in this by the Chaetonium. So the Chaetomium is very similar to Stachybotrys. It's a thick black mold. Typically, when you see Chaetomium, you're going to find some Stachybotrys once you open up a wall or wherever it is. Now, the one thing that you need to know about the lab that we use, the SEML, for whatever reason on this, if you have a spore of Stachybotrys, it does change this to elevated mold conditions, yes. It understands that we do not accept Stachybotrys. However, it does not do the same thing for Chaetomium. So Chaetomium is the same way. If there's any Chaetomium there, it should be elevated conditions, yes. Now the lab puts no, but you can still say if there's any Chaetomium there that it needs mold remediation. So we have this downstairs sample showing an issue. Now, let's see if there's anything else. Okay, so that's all that we have. So that is the reason why that we'd be recommending professional mold removal. And in this case, we only see the problem in the basement, so we would be making a containment area, and the only work area that we would be suggesting would be the basement. Okay, so I'm going to move on to a different report. Okay, so for this one, you see a whole lot of samples taken. Same thing we see. Let's find the control. There's our control. Got by the garage, by pallets. We see a lot of cladosporium outside. We see basidiospores outside. Everything looks normal. The same thing with all these other species of mold. You're rarely going to see anything. It's really going to be basidiospores, Chaetomium, cladosporium, Penicillium aspergillus, Stachybotrys. That's really our main things that we're going to come across. Other than that, if you see anything out of the ordinary, you can always scroll down to the bottom and say, if somebody says, hey, what's going on with the asospores? And you can kind of just get a little bit of description and see exactly what's going on there or why that might be there. But you have, so example, the asospores, it might be on rotting wood or something along those lines, and we did see a little bit of the asospores outside, which is typical, because sometimes you have some various things that are rotting wood, or it even said mushroom growth. That sort of thing happens naturally outside. So it could be a definitive on do you see that inside and you don't see that outside? Yeah, maybe that might be something to look into. But in general, you're really not going to see these other ones other than the ones that I touched on. So in this, I'm looking. I see the Penicillium aspergillus. There's no Penicillium aspergillus outside. There's no Stachybotrys. Inside, and there's no Chaetomium. Okay, let's see what other samples we got. Come down here, same thing. We got some cladosporium, some basidiospores, nothing out of the ordinary really. No Stachybotrys, no Chaetomium, same thing. Okay, so scroll down. Nothing really sticks out to me that there's a problem here, and that is indicated in the elevated mold conditions, no. So in this case, we would pretty much just give the client the clearance letter and say no professional mold remediation or there's elevated conditions do not exist. No professional mold remediation is being recommended. Go to another one. Okay, so first thing I look at, I'm going to come down here and see elevated mold conditions. Yes, okay, so something's kicking this off and showing that there's a problem. Control, there we go. Somewhat higher cladosporium outside. That you see fluctuations in this depending on where the place is located. If there's a lot of landscaping or foliage, or it's might be a pond in the backyard or something like that kicks these basidiospores and cladosporium numbers up. It really all just varies. Now, coming and seeing what caused this to be a failed test. I come to Penicillium aspergillus, got nothing. Stachybotrys, we have nothing. Chaetomium, nothing. Okay, what's causing the issue here? We'll scroll down a little bit further. Okay, here we go. So now we get to this sample, and we have the Penicillium aspergillus at 25,000 spores per cubic meter. Now, anything over 1,000 spores is a failed test. So we definitely have a mold issue in this wall. It basically is going to say, you're going to say the dining room wall has a mold issue that has yet to become airborne, because we've taken this test, so it's pretty much been consolidated. The nice thing about that is we can make this work area as small as possible for the client. So they can put this work area as only having to be in this wall. So basically they're going to put up a containment area around this wall that has the mold in it, and do all the work in there. The smaller the work area, the smaller the bill is, the happier that this client is going to be, the fact that they used our services to do that. So if they didn't do that and they said we had this mold problem, they could potentially say, a mold remediation company could potentially say, we need to do work not only in this area, but we need air scrubbers running in the other area of the house. In the upstairs it's affected and this and that. But really we have shown, even with this, no air duct cleaning is necessary, because it's not becoming an airborne problem, and we are going to close off that area while we're doing the work, so it's not going to be an issue. So they're saving money on air duct cleaning. So anything over 1,000 spores is a failed test. Now, typically, if we see that let's say that this upstairs sample came back with 1,000 spores of Penicillium aspergillus, or 1,100 spores of Penicillium aspergillus, you would say it really kind of depends on who the client is. It's a judgment call based on what you've seen. While these lab results do give you an idea and do tell us what is going on, in terms of recommendations for mold removal, that is going to be on the opinion of the inspector. So if you think that this is 1,000 spores, it's just over the threshold for a failed test, and you think that the primary concern was in the dining room, which is downstairs, you could potentially say that you can make a containment area, because this upstairs is slightly elevated, and we can make a containment area, and if you get the mold if you get the source of the problem, and you get to make sure that no more mold is growing in the future, that this number could potentially go down on its own. Now, this may be something you want to discuss with the client on the phone, just maybe as a prequel to actually making your report. Say, hey, this is what's going on. This is my suggestions. What would you like me to, what do you feel would be the best for your situation? And most clients are going to say, if you don't think it's necessary in the upstairs, I want you to leave that out of the recommendations for mold removal, because it is going to make their bill more expensive. In general, that's pretty much it. The Penicillium aspergillus, Stachybotrys is easy. If there's any Stachybotrys, failed test. Any Chaetomium, failed test. Now, if you do have some Cladosporium that is much higher than the outside control, that could be an issue as well. That's so other than those measures, look for, if you don't see anything like that, look for things that are much higher than the outside control. So for example, if we saw that this upstairs was 5,000 spores of Basidiospores, that would be something to look into, and that would be something that you shouldn't see. It should be either for these non-toxic common species of mold, you should have equal to or lower than numbers, or at least maybe a little bit higher than the outside, but that's really it. Swab samples are fairly easy to read. You're going to, I don't have one of those right here, but it's really just there's a key down at the bottom right here. When you're actually doing a swab sample, it's a different it's the same kind of grid, but it tells you the species and everything. And just use the key for no, it says no fungal growth, scattered spores, and this and that. If you take a swab sample and it comes back with light Cladosporium, that is likely a surface mold that can be wiped away. If the swab sample is Penicillium aspergillus, that is most likely an issue that is either caused by a widespread problem that has now on the drywall and has infiltrated the drywall, that it needs to be removed. Stachybotrys 100% needs to be removed. Various things like that. So this is pretty much how to read lab results, and if you have any questions, we're always ready to take any calls or emails about it, and happy to help.